Hello and welcome to the Cinema Savvy Movie Podcast, the channel for film reviews, discussions and everything in between. I'm Chris Garner, joined with my co-host George Aldridge, and today is another episode of our midweek show, Film Club. Recording this slightly later than usual, but schedules being what they are, but recording it now, and that's the main point. So this week, it was my choice to pick a film. How Film Club works is that each week we take it in turns to nominate a film at the end of our main show, which sort of ties in with whatever we reviewed at that time. It was my turn to pick, so I picked The Town, and my link from that, linking with Mission Impossible: Rogue Nation, was it was two links really. One was Jeremy Renner is obviously in both films, and in The Town he was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor, and I also went off the cinematographer as well, which was Robert Elswit. So I had two links there. So, we'll jump straight into our review for The Town. Before we get into the main film, we'll sort of go through our opinions and like things we'd heard about it, stuff like that. I was always aware, mostly from like Argo and stuff like that, that Ben Affleck was sort of this new force to be reckoned with directing. But I'd never really watched any of his movies. They always looked good, but I always had that feeling like, oh, I don't know if these movies would be kind of my style, stuff that I'd usually watch. But even going back, I believe that this is his second movie out of all the ones he's directed. But I'd always heard the name keep coming up all the time. The Town is a brilliant one to watch, stuff like that. And if we sort of go through our opinions on that, like just initial opinions, I thought this film was absolutely just phenomenal. I loved it. Like I went in, I didn't watch any trailers beforehand. I just thought I'm going to give this like a cold viewing and see, if it wows me. I guess we should say as well, we both watched the extended cut. I was about an hour into it, and then you messaged me and said, "Are we watching the theatrical or the extended cut?" And I like paused it. I was like, "Oh shit, there's two versions." But no, we both watched the extended cut. But yeah, I absolutely thought this film was fantastic.
Yeah, the exact same. I mean, I'd seen Argo before and I loved it. Thought, yeah, that should have won Best Director, although we weren't nominated. Then I'd also seen, obviously, how good it was. The Town, I really wanted to watch. I had it on Blu-ray, never got around to it. And it's one of them where finally I could see it. Didn't know anything about it except it was meant to be quality. And then it was one of them where it was just outstanding. And I didn't even know it was a heist film. I was loving the action.
Oh yeah, and I'd say that's probably one of its strongest moments. But it was just the fact I didn't know what it was about going in and stuff, and it's just so good when you can just sit in a movie and just just get swept up in it and just go along for the ride with it. And that's exactly what this movie does. It doesn't shy away from like the violence in it. The action's intense, but it also focuses a lot on character and stuff like that. So it's basically an amalgamation of everything you want in a movie, and it's definitely made me really excited to go back and watch all of Ben Affleck's other movies. I know that he's got Gone Baby Gone's meant to be fantastic, and Argo obviously as well as one I definitely need to watch, and it's one I sort of missed in that 2012 period when like all the Oscar movies came out. It was one that I just never got around to. So we'll go into the review a little bit more now. We'll sort of like go into the plot a bit. It's basically picks up where Ben Affleck's part of this gang in Boston. They're sort of in a grotty part of Boston where there's like loads of gangs and there's just like no hope on the streets, all that kind of stuff. And he's trying to break away from this life of crime. So the movie starts off with a bank robbery, and he slowly throughout the rest of the film develops feelings for one of the bank managers who works there. And she obviously doesn't know that he was part of the heist. They were all wearing masks, and it's sort of this struggle as he goes on. He's trying to break away from this life of crime, but the crime seems to keep pulling him back for like one last job towards the end. So right there, I thought the initial sort of premise was really interesting, and it could have been very cliched like a love story, but I think it's believable, and you sort of buy their relationship together. I think the whole film was basically right on the fact that you believe that these two people could be together, and it's like those moments. By the way, this review is going to have spoilers as well in case you haven't seen the movie. But there's a bit where they're sitting at a table where they're sort of like on a date, and then Renner shows up, and she knows she's identified that one of the people in the heist had a tattoo on the back of their neck, and it's so tense when he sits down and like Ben Affleck has to like cover the tattoo on the back of the neck, because you do actually want these two people to to be together. You know that eventually at the end something's going to go wrong. She's going to find out, and it might not all work out the way you wanted it to. But I thought like their chemistry in the movie was brilliant together.
Yeah, and I think speaking of that scene with the tattoo, when you watch Argo for the first time, it's unbelievably tense. There's two or three main bits, but you're literally there on the edge of the seat. You're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? And then watching the town was very much like that, especially that table scene, because you know what Affleck does. He's clever. He gets the shots with close up at the back of the neck, so the audience like will know. Okay, she knows it's him. And then Ben Affleck's kind of the whole time trying to like, not make us see it, and you just think she's gonna see it. Then nobody grabs his neck and stuff. It was quality that moment, and the whole film itself. Each bank heist, whenever something was going wrong, whether it's gunfire at the finale or smacking that bloke in the face at the start,
Mm.
you want the robbers to do well, but then you kind of want them to like tone it down. But it was just fantastic. But the dynamic between him and Rebecca Hall. I mean, I've only seen her in. I think she might have been in The Prestige of Chris
Yeah, she
Nolan,
was. Yeah.
and also Iron Man 3 very briefly, I think. So
Mm.
she's one of them where I haven't seen her a lot, but this was probably the best thing I've seen her in. I mean, she had a lead role for the first time, and it was all right. And I just like the dynamic where she ends up falling for the robber that's like kind of ruined her life.
And I think Rebecca Hall was also in a Transcendence as well, but I haven't actually seen that movie. But I didn't hear great things from it. Yeah, the only other thing I've seen her in besides Iron Man 3 is Prestige, and right when I saw her in that, I thought she was one of the strongest points in that movie. I thought she was brilliant, and I'd love to see her come back for another Nolan movie in the future because I think she's a really great actress. And even Ben Affleck, like he was sort of, you know, revered to be a terrible actor. Like people always bring up Daredevil from 2003. I didn't actually think he was that bad in that movie, but I'm seen to be the only person who actually enjoyed that movie. Um, but I thought this is definitely sort of his step into his resurgence in his career. I think, like, I thought his acting was great. I know before we hit record, you were talking about his Boston accent, and you thought it was pretty bad. Um, I'm not too clued up on the Boston accent, so I don't know whether it was a horrific attempt at it or if it was, completely passable. But I thought he was really good, and there was never moments where I thought like, "Oh, Ben Affleck's boring." Every time he's on screen, he's just absolutely knocking the role out of the park. And the fact that he directed this as well, and I think he helped write the screenplay as well. It really shows what a talent he is because it can't be easy to both act and direct a movie as well.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. You can look at it. Very few people do it. Normally, you've got a strong director, and if they're good enough, they'll write. But when you've got someone that's doing all three, it's absolutely mental. But that's how he's bringing the best out of himself. If you look at it, he knows exactly what he's doing. He's calling his own shots, and it's clearly improving him as an actor. And I want to see more of it. Obviously, the so-called Batman trilogy we'll be getting is going to be a part of that. That's going to be great because I could just picture him really owning the role. I know it's off topic, but I think Ben Affleck's a director that's got a big future in film, and I think he's already got one Oscar win for best film. He's probably eventually going to get a best director at this rate.
And I mean, if there's any strength of this movie, like coming away from it after I've seen it, it's made me really want to see all the other Affleck movies that he's directed and stuff like that. And I will probably now, it'll sort of be like Tarantino in this regard, where I will go and see every movie in the future that he directs because I think he's that good, and that just stands to how good this film is on its own. Another sort of character I want to bring up is the guy who was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. Is the dynamic really between Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner's character? They're both brothers, and you really get that sense of a bond between them. But it's when they go out on jobs, and Affleck's sort of the more reserved member of the gang. Like he's the one with a conscience and knows what's good and what's bad. But Jeremy Renner's sort of like the wild card. Like there's a bit where Rebecca Hall when she's with Ben Affleck says like she's being harassed by like gang members and stuff, and she's having to take a longer way to walk home because she can't cut through a certain part of town without being attacked. So Affleck goes to Jeremy Renner and he's like, "Look, we need to deal with something." And they go to this place, and Affleck just sort of threatens him a little bit, like says like, "Don't do it again." But Renner like comes in with like a sledgehammer and like breaks his fingers and like shoots him about 3 times in the leg. And every single time, like you see the look on Affleck's face, like he's shocked by this and he wants to do something, but then he sort of, I don't know if he sort of gets the impression that this is just the area he grows up in. And Jeremy Renner keeps arguing that, look, this is how things are done now. You wanted to send a message. This is how you do that. So it's again this like other factor that filters into Affleck's decision. Like he wants to move away from this place, and there's a really nice sort of heart to heart moment between him and Renner later on in the film, where Renner's saying like, "Oh, you're going all high and mighty now. You want to leave to Florida. This is where you grew up. This is where you belong. Stay with us."
Yeah, and I really like Renner in this. I mean, I've seen him in a few things, but Hurt Locker, Avengers, Born Legacy, it's all very similar. Kind of this toned down guy, a bit more freedom in Hurt Locker, but in this he's like on his own level. I know he got nominated for an Oscar, and he's very, very good in it. One of the strongest members of the cast. I wouldn't say the best, but it's some of the scenes where he just loses it. Like I haven't seen this before from him, and he's awesome at doing it. And another scene just before he dies, he's kind of like, "Oh fuck the cops," or that sort of stuff. But then you just see him like crawling, slurping on his like final drink. That he just doesn't want to go back to prison. He'd rather die than. It's just he kind of just gets up, gets both guns out, and just gets obliterated. But that kind of summed up his character, that he just didn't care, and he was so cool as well. I mean, when Jon Hamm, who played the FBI agent, was following him in the streets, Jeremy Renner just turns around with an Uzi and just tries to like destroy him, and he just didn't care. Whereas Ben Affleck was the quiet, reserved one. And you're right, the dynamic between them, it suits the film perfectly, and it's so easy to have two of the same type of character that make it boring. The fact that you've got this like personal connection, and then two completely different personalities is really good, and it strengthens the film.
Definitely. And that bit at the end, what you were saying, where the sort of job goes awry and Renner's escaping, and he sort of like ducks down behind that thing. I mean, this guy's a cop killer, so he's not a good guy, and there may be a shred of you that sort of wants them to be successful in their heist and get away and stuff like that. But at that moment, you kind of know, and Affleck knows as well, because both of them sort of disguise as police officers and escape the scene of the final crime that they're attempting. Renner's got the money. I believe he's got the money, hasn't he? And then Affleck
Yeah,
picks it up. Yeah. And you can kind of see it. It's like there's more and more cops. All this. He gets clipped. He ducks behind the thing, and you're right. He has that final drink, and you know that he's gonna jump out because that's the kind of guy he is. He's sort of like a no retreat, no surrender guy. He will be in this till the end because he doesn't want to go back to jail. Like he'd rather die than go back to jail. And I do think this is probably the best thing I have seen Renner in. Again, I haven't seen him in all that much outside of like the Mission Impossible films, and obviously the Avengers and stuff as well. I'm just looking here that who he lost to that year, and you see he was up against some other big hitters. He was against Jeffrey Rush from The King's Speech, and right there, I think that Rush's performance was better than Renner's, and he lost to Christian Bale from The Fighter.
oh
That's a
yeah,
movie I still haven't seen yet. So, but I saw like what Christian Bale did for that role, so fair enough for that. But he's still like this is still probably the best thing I've seen Renner in, and he gets like really intense at moments and stuff like that. But there's another character I want to talk about who literally put the fear of God into me, and that was the late great Pete Postlethwaite. I didn't realise he was in this movie, and he's not in it a whole lot. He's in it towards probably the end more than anything. But he's like this Irish guy who runs a florist, but that's sort of a front for all the criminal activity he does and all that kind of stuff. Um, and there's a moment, the moment that comes to mind is where Ben Affleck goes in and he says, "Look, I don't want to do this last heist job." It's when the police are sort of almost onto them and the heat's really high. He says, "I want to leave. I'm walking away." And then Pete Postlethwaite says like, "No, you're not walking away. You're gonna do this job." And he basically says like what he did to his dad. and how he got his dad locked up and all that stuff. And it really shows what power he has. And it's at that moment where you realise that Affleck's sort of powerless, like he's vulnerable in this situation. He just wants to leave with his new girlfriend. He just wants to settle down, have a simple life away from crime. But you realise that once you put your foot in that door, it's almost impossible to get away with it.
Yeah, with Pete Postlethwaite, the whole scene where he went off on one was quality because he's sitting there. I think he's got a rose and he's just cutting the stems off, and then he's just not even looking at Ben Affleck and he's going on about how he got the mother hung and did all the father stuff, and the fact that all his attention is on just doing the rose still. It was so intimidating, but it was such a powerful moment. I mean, I know it's one of his latter films, but that and Inception came out, I think, did you say 2 months apart or something like that?
Yeah.
And then in Inception, he's got one of my favourite scenes, as we spoke about before, with the final moment in the hospital bed. And again, 1 month later to this, and he's kind of in this like bizarre gangster phase, and it was so cool to see on the screen. It's such a loss that he's gone, but he absolutely stole it from Renner, I think, and he got nominated for a BAFTA, and that scene is worthy of that.
Oh yeah, definitely. And as you were saying, like with Inception, came out the same year. You realise just what a great actor he was. Like two so very different performances, and he just like knocks it out of the park on both of those accounts. There's also another character in it who we can talk about briefly if you want. Jon Hamm, who's the FBI special agent. He doesn't really get all that much to do. He's sort of out of all the characters, he's probably the most stock character. He's just sort of, your typical FBI agent wants to stop the gangs that are going on. But throughout the movie, like what he's doing's right, but as I say, like maybe it's just because I have a thing for like bad guys and stuff like that. Although in this movie there are no real bad guys. It's just sort of like moral grey area stuff like that. Um, I almost wanted like Ben Affleck and the crew to get away with it. Like is Jon Hamm's character is just sort of he plays by the rules, I guess. Like he just wants to bring them in, stuff like that. Although there is that one scene where he gets Affleck in the interrogation room, and he says like, "Look, there's going to be no like you can't appeal like to get out and stuff like that. There's going to be no bail. Like when you're in prison, like you're there to stay, and I'm going to make your life a living hell when you're in jail, stuff like that." So there's that moment where he sort of skirts the line of like being moral as an FBI agent, but you get that he wants to bring these gangs in, and you've got to take into consideration. Like, I think there's a text like crawl at the start or something like that comes up saying that Charlestown is the area in Boston where the most bank robberies and stuff like that happen. So you get the impression that he's sort of been in the game for a long time, and he's almost at breaking point at this point.
Yeah, and I think with him, it's whenever anything happens, he's like, shut the bridges, shut the bridges. He's getting mental, like, just do it now. Because they know exactly where they're going, but it's one of them, when they get into Charleston, they know they can't catch them. And it was this good dynamic, and then you see the sort of sleazebag side to him where he's trying to chat up Blake Lively in the bar, doing it all to get information. He's kind of blackmailing her and stuff into getting his that. So it's kind of the standard stock agent FBI guy that he's just going to do everything he can to try and get the case. But when it kind of gets in, he has this nice little throwaway where Ben Affleck leaves him a note. I did it say go fuck yourself or something.
Yeah.
And then he kind of looks at it. He doesn't really smile, but he just passes it on to the guy that's above him because he clearly doesn't like the person that he's working on his name. So that was a kind of like funny little closing arc for him.
Mm. Yeah, and I love sort of character arcs like that where you've got the pursuer and the guy being pursued, and sort of like throughout the movie they form this sort of not sort of a bond, but like a respect for each other. It's sort of like in the film Les Mis between Russell Crowe and Hugh Jackman. It's where they kind of acknowledge each other at the end. I love story arcs like that, and it's a very similar one in this. Um, from there, I guess we can talk about the heists and stuff because, to be honest, these are probably some of the best heists I've ever seen in a movie. It opens with a bank robbery, and watching it for some reason, it really reminded me of the Dark Knight's opening. I love to see a good bank robbery in a movie. I don't know why the formula's always very much the same, sort of like mask-wearing people break in, shout, shoot up the place a bit, and like take hold of the manager, stuff like that. So they're all not very different. But one bit I loved in the opening is where they get Rebecca Hall's character and he says like open the safe, and usually when you see anything like this in a movie they'll just do it immediately, but she kept like messing up the combination because she was shaking and she was terrified, and right there I was like, this is probably the most realistic one I've seen, because it's very rare that like in any bank situation like that in any other movie that they do that. And you can see that Renner and like the other gang are getting really frustrated, but Affleck's the one who's like, breathe, take your time, you're not gonna get hurt, just open the safe.
Yeah, and it's the little details that make the biggest amount of difference, and that's one of them. And that's kind of your introduction to Ben Affleck's character, where you know he kind of cares a bit more. Then it cuts to Jeremy Renner, who keeps smacking the other bank guy in the face, and they cut to him in hospital, and he's all mangled and stuff. And I really like the dynamic, and I think the fact that they make the bank manager have a relationship with the main of the heist, it's so interesting. You're kind of waiting for the moment she finds out that he is the
Mm.
thief, and even she's got a nice little bit at the end where she gets all the money off him, and it's done through her little plant pot. One of my only minor issues is that, does everyone dig in that same plant pot area? She might have seen that like 2, 3 years later, but still, it was a nice sort of redeeming moment.
Yeah, I think it was just like he went there at one point, didn't he? So I think that must have been like her bit, like that, you like hire a bit of land or whatever. That was her bit. I don't know, but yeah. And then the other heist, apart from the one at the end, which gets really intense, is the one where they're all dressed up as nuns. And this is the picture that's on the poster and stuff like that. They're in these really sort of creepy, old, old-faced nun masks kind of thing, and there's a really sort of, it could be funny, but it seems really eerie in the film. It's where they drive past this little kid out the window, and it all goes into slow motion, and the kid's just kind of staring like with shocked. And the guy in the nun mask just like slowly turns to him and just looks at him, and it's like a really little moment, but it's right before the heist happens, and it's just kind of weird. I think like I love that scene. It's sort of like in Dark Knight where the Joker's driving away in the police car and he sticks his head out the window and it goes into slow mo. It's like a really sort of weird bit that doesn't particularly need to be in the film, but it just like adds a little bit to it. And then the ensuing car chase after that. That was the moment where I was really like, how are they going to get away from this? And that speaks to the credit of the film as well. Like every single heist they were going on, I was like, they're not going to make it out of this. Like, or if you do, if there's still like half of the movie left, it's like, how are they going to get away from this? And it was when like all the police cars were mounting up, they were like driving through all like tight corners and streets and stuff, and then it ends in a shootout. Renner's just like merciless. He'll just like gun down police officers like it's nothing, and then they set fire to the van at the end. I love that chase. It was perfectly shot. It was well paced. It was intense action, and just a really cool character moment as well. Like that you see like Renner's desperation to get away.
Yeah, and also what I love about the bank chase is one of the funniest moments of the film, which again it's not really necessary, but they get into Charleston. They will get out of their car with their
Mm.
machine guns. Hashtag nuns with guns is what I'd say. Um, they get
I
out.
like that.
They get out of the car. They got the money, just four of them, and then they look to the left, and there's this like cop staring at them with like his mouth down,
Mm.
and they all like point their guns at him, and they're all kind of waiting. You think, oh shit, is he gonna call in or is he gonna get obliterated? And he just turns his head to the side and pretends he can't see him, which was just hilarious. Like it shouldn't be, but it was just so funny that moment because a lot could have gone worse. If he would have called it in, he would have been dead. They would have found them all, stuff like that. So the fact
Mm.
that he just turned his head, it was funny, but it's the right thing to do for his own safety.
Yeah, it's only like a couple of seconds, and it's almost like a sort of Western standoff. Like it's a close up of both of them. I think all the music cuts out, and it's just silence, and you hear like the distant sirens, stuff like that. And they've just gone through all this trouble to get this money, and gone through all this chase and like escaped. And then when you see them, you're like, oh fucking hell, they're gonna get caught now. But when he turned his head, it was just a fantastic moment, and it shows not the level of corruption, but like the sort of fear the police have for all the gangs like that. Um, I'm trying to think what else as well. Oh, I guess we could touch on the music really quickly. It's not like a prominent force in the film, but there were a few little cues that I really liked. And then when the credits hit, There's Harry Gregson Williams and David Buckley did the music. I'm not familiar on David Buckley's work, but Harry Gregson Williams is a brilliant composer. I don't know if you've ever seen Kingdom of Heaven, the Ridley Scott movie. He did the music to that. Brilliant soundtrack for that, and the Metal Gear Solid games as well. He does the soundtrack to those, and they're some of the best soundtracks you'll hear for a game. Again, the music's not a major part of the film, but it's like the sort of emotional bits between Ben Affleck and Rebecca Hall. The music seems to really kick in there, and especially for the ending and the credits, stuff like that.
Yeah, and it's not. You're right. It's not completely noticeable, but there's one or two good bits. But I think it's one of these films where you didn't really notice the soundtrack because the film's just so good in itself. Like if they ever had a top composer, as in like a Zimmer, Williams, someone of that
Mm.
level, it could have been even better. But it worked perfectly the way it was. I don't think a massive name would have improved it because it's not a low budget film, but for a film of this caliber, you can look at ones like Heat. They've all got massive budgets, massive stars. This was kind of a lower down one. It was as good as a lot of them.
Oh yeah, definitely. So from there, I guess we can do favorite moments and then sort of wrap up our final thoughts of the film. If you wanna go first with this one.
I'd say the final heist is probably my favourite, but I know it's about a
Mm.
10-15 minute chunk, but it's when it's going right, then it goes horribly wrong, then you think they're getting away as the cops, then the FBI is like, oh, why is there a cop walking away and stuff? So it's one of them where I really enjoyed that whole final act, and I think it had a great payoff.
Yeah, I could very easily say one of the heists as well, but I'm going to go with a slightly different moment. It's where it's after the final heist. It's after Renner's been killed, and it's Affleck's trying to escape. Um, and he calls up Rebecca Hall's character, and she's surrounded by the police. They're tracing the call, and she's trying to like lure him back to the place so he can get arrested. And he can see her through the window, and he can see that she's surrounded by all the police. And she says like, "Oh, come here. I'm not with anyone." And then you see the look on his face, and he looks really like sad that she's gonna sell him out, stuff like that. But then she gives sort of like a clue word. Like she said earlier that she always hates sunny days because I can't remember what she says. It's something to do with her brother. Is it when her brother died or something like that? It was a sunny day,
Yeah,
and
something like that.
yeah, and she's always really sad in that. So she says like, "Oh, come here, will be really happy like one of my sunny days." And right there, like you can tell that obviously she's covering for him, and it's like a sign, "Don't come here." And then he smiles, and then he goes, "Okay." And I liked that because when it was getting to that point, I thought it's believable that she would sell him out because obviously he's done all this stuff and he's sort of lied to her and he was the one hit in the bank that busted up the place where she was working there at the start. But I thought that was really nice because I didn't know if they'd end it sort of like tie it up where they are together, and they kind of do hint to that in the ending shot of the movie and stuff like that. But I thought that was a really nice moment. That's probably my favourite moment of the film. Um, but if I'm going to do final thoughts, absolutely fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, check it out. I haven't seen Ben Affleck's other movies, but based on this film alone, it's really made me interested to see his other work, see how he's progressed from this to Argo, to see Gone Baby Gone as well. And then I'll check all his other future projects out as well. It's a great cast, fantastic performances all across the board, really good story, and some of the best like heist, bank robbery stuff you'll see in a movie ever. I would say.
Oh, definitely. This is one of Ben Affleck's best films. It's probably going to be one of his better ones. Then again, I might be wrong, but it's very good. It's great. It looks great with visual work. It's one of the best heist films I've seen in a long time, and it's just like great in itself. There's a lot going on. The characters are likable, hateable, everything you need this film to be. It ticks the checkpoints, and if you haven't seen it, it's worth watching. It's quite bizarre, like how quiet it is. I mean, of a film like this, I thought it'd have a reputation like Heat, where almost everyone's
Mm.
seen it that likes these films, but it's kept very quiet, which is a bit of a shame because it's a film that if a lot of people saw it, they'd probably love it.
Yeah, it's weird. There's a lot of films like this that don't get much recognition or don't get talked about a lot. Often the better films, but yeah, like support this movie. Definitely go and see it, and check out Ben Affleck's other stuff as well because I'm definitely going to do that as well. So yeah, rate, like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you thought of The Town or Ben Affleck's other projects or just films in general. Want to get a discussion going with this. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/cinemasavvy. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/cinema_savvy and on letterboxd.com/cinema_savvy as well. So thank you very much for checking out our review for The Town. Come back Monday for our main show. We're going to be doing another one of our top 10 lists. We're going to be doing the top 10 best superhero movies of all time. I think we decided on that now. We wasn't sure whether to do that or the worst superhero movies, but I think we're going to have a good list each for our best superhero movies. So you can find that on Monday. And until then, thank you very much for listening.